have to start with something that you pointed out, which is a question that I have asked, is what is the definition of extremism?
Right.
Because how do you go, and I'm again, the military perspective, and I'm still serving, I'm almost 18 years now in the Army Reserves, still serving as a civil affairs officer, and so when I look at things from that military mindset, and you're saying, okay, well, we've got a problem that we've got to root out, you first have to actually define what that problem is, or if you're talking about an enemy, like Al-Qaeda, for example, you first have to understand and identify that enemy, what their ideology is, what they're seeking to accomplish in order to go in and defeat that enemy. I see what is happening here to be so dangerous because these terms, extremism, domestic extremism, these sorts of things are being thrown out without any real definition at all. And so, an extremist from we're seeing this, an extremist from somebody who's coming from the ultra left in politics could be somebody who has an American flag in front of their house, who says, I love my country. And it could be someone in New Hampshire who has a live free or die flag. Could be someone who's an evangelical Christian or a practicing Hindu who's a very devout practitioner of their spiritual practice. So who is defining what extremism is? And
this is the problem.
I'd love to finish that sentence. Without defining it, then what we're seeing is a very dangerous targeting of a broad swath of America by who, and really this comes back to, okay, well, this depends on who's in power. And that definition can change depending on which way the political winds blow or the power shifts.
We had a hard time the first 10 years of this century. We argued over and over again, extremist, not extremist, you're a bigot, you're not a bigot, over Islam. And from the beginning, I don't have a problem with Islam. I don't have a problem with Muslims. I have a problem with Islamicists. That is a very specific category that believe that government needs to be run by mullahs exactly the way the way they interpret the Quran, and it's extremist. It is extremist. It's incompatible with any kind of freedom. But
and it's exclusivist as well.
Yes.
I'm sorry to jump in, but it is that specific Islamist, that radical Islamist ideology is an exclusivist one that says if you do not adhere to our interpretation of the Quran or Islam, then we're going to kill you, we're going to behead you, or enslave you. And this is the ideology that fuels terrorist groups like Al-Qaeda and ISIS. And that exclusivism is I'm pointing out because it's so dangerous. You can see some hints of that with what we're seeing now. Where if you do not adhere to our ideology of who's in power, then you don't get to speak.
So I have to tell you,
don't get to
I don't think, and I haven't heard people talk about this in mainstream media, I honestly think that many Americans think there were so many games that were played in the last election that you don't know. But nothing was ever shown that had real teeth to it. And even if there was a lot of, game playing and fudging, I don't know if there was enough to prove it. And the Constitution doesn't take your best guess. And once it's over, it's over. There's no redress constitutionally, even if we found a giant, black bag full of all of the evidence. There's nothing constitutionally you can do about it. And I really, truly believe that people do want to unite. They're tired of this. But as we come out of it, everyone who voted for Donald Trump is now being called an extremist. You can't even question the vote. I'm not questioning it because I want Donald Trump to be president. I want the election process to be safe and effective and right. I want to make sure we protect for future elections. when you see we want to unite, it is that isolationist kind of thing. To unite, all you have to do is just believe what I believe. Be on my side. It doesn't work.
That doesn't work in life. That doesn't work in marriage or family.
Right. I mean, at some point, if that's your view in marriage, you are going to get a divorce, or you're going to chop your husband into little pieces. You know what I mean? It doesn't work. At what point do both sides get to that point to where they say, I keep asking on the air, for both sides, you don't like it, fine. But if everyone on the other side is your enemy, then what? Because you get all of the power like the Democrats have right now, then what? You still have half the country that doesn't agree with you. So you either, and it's quite frightening, you either have to silence them, re-educate them in some way or another, or round them all up. So you've been in the Democratic committees and been around people. Let me ask you, so then what?
The words that Joe Biden spoke in his inauguration speech spoke very strongly to this message of unity.
Yes.
Spoke very strongly to this message of reaching out specifically to all Americans, including those who did not vote for him.
Mm-hmm.
There's a heavy weight of responsibility on his shoulders and on the shoulders of those in power currently. Democrats in the House and the Senate need to turn that rhetoric into action. But unfortunately, and this is what's so disheartening, is that we're not seeing that. In fact, we're seeing the exact opposite. To hear, again, my last day in Congress was January 2nd, and within just a few days, to hear Nancy Pelosi and the Democrats talk the Republicans, the quote-unquote enemy within, is so deeply troubling and dangerous.
Yeah.
Because of what it is, but also where that leads. How can you expect to heal the wounds of this country when you're castigating those in the other political party as the enemy within, which then if you carry that through says that if any Democrat is caught looking to making, or God forbid, working with a Republican on legislation to solve problems, then you're working with the enemy. What does that make you? That makes you a traitor.
Right.
And this just, I mean, it flies in the face of again, everything that our country is founded on, and you know, the kind of decorum that I think the American people would expect from leaders in Congress, if not respecting their colleagues, at least respecting the voters who sent them there. And that's what it comes down to, is when you start dehumanizing and vilifying others in the way that is happening now, you are dismissing and throwing up the middle finger at the millions of voters who sent them there.
You are, they keep saying that right-wing extremists are the source of problems while not defining them, and yet using brushstrokes so broad that everyone who didn't vote for Biden feels like they might be included in that. And it is almost like you're just getting poked in the eye with a stick every day, and they want you to react. I mean, I couldn't design a plan better to get people to rise up against you, which leads me to this question. I was totally fine with Biden having a very safe inauguration. I thought the troops there was a little overkill, but okay, I don't want anything ever to happen to the president or anybody in office. We have to save that. But why are they still there? Have you ever done a mission that was undefined, was an undefined enemy, undefined goal, undefined period of time? I didn't think the Pentagon ever allowed that to happen until now. Is this unique?
In my experience, it is unique, especially here at home. have other conversation about interventionist regime change wars that have ill-defined objectives overseas with unending deployments. But when we're talking about a mission here at home, I have been deployed in these domestic response missions before. We had an active volcano, National Guard went to respond. Obviously, there's flooding and hurricanes. There are very specific missions that our National Guard soldiers have been deployed to go and serve a purpose and then get back home to their lives and their families. I was really disturbed to see on many levels what I think it was around 20,000 at one point.
Yeah.
National Guard soldiers deployed there to our nation's capital. Again, like you, we want, inauguration, the president, we want people to be safe, but it seemed like a very disproportionate response that sent a dangerous message to the American people and frankly to the world of, is our nation under attack from the American people? Is that really what's happening here? Is this really put in place to kind of foment fear amongst our own people that our government is somehow farther and farther separated from us? Some of my friends are sending me pictures still of the fences and the concertina wire, barbed wire, and the patrolling of troops around our nation, really not really knowing if or when this is going to end, with some saying, like in the post 9/11 era, the security measures that were put in place were never reduced, and now that this may just be the new norm. Now our capital will only be open to people who work there, and everyone else will be treated as a threat. But I also want to talk, like I missed answering an earlier question that really does hit home to me. You asked if in the military I had experienced being surrounded by white supremacists or quote unquote extremists, whatever that means. And the answer to that question is no.
Never.
I've served now for almost 18 years, and from basic training in Fort Jackson, South Carolina, back in 2003, I've served at a number of military bases across the country, in Oklahoma, and in Texas, and Pennsylvania, and South Carolina, many different bases. I've been deployed twice in the Middle East, worked with troops from across our military, and in my experience, it has been a representation of Americans from all different backgrounds, different political ideologies, different views on things. But as you said in your opening, when it came right down to it, when it was time to execute that mission, it's Team America. We are putting service and country and the American people above any other, superficial differences or of course we have debates, talk all the time about different things and we come at issues from a different perspective, but we wear that same uniform that has the American flag on our arm with great pride and great privilege and honor to have to be given that opportunity to serve.
So that's what I thought you would say, and I agree with you.
And it's dangerous for them. It's very dangerous for them to, and I read this headline after headline, day after day, to cast this suspicion over our military as though this is now who our military is, and nothing can be further from the truth.
And it is the only institution that has been pretty much unscathed. We don't believe in our justice system. We have questions about our police. We don't trust Congress or the Senate or the White House. Who do we trust? The only ones that have constantly been up against the military. And now, I don't know. I believe our military is just like, the Bakers Association of America. I'm sure there's some bad people in there, and there's a majority of good people, because that's what America is. So they've got their bad apples, but this is not that. We're not looking for a few people. The new Attorney General, when he was testifying, said this is a more dangerous time than the Oklahoma City bombing for homegrown terrorists and white supremacists and right-wing extremists. Excuse me? What?
Yeah, So white supremacy, there's a very specific ideology and definition of what white supremacy is, right? I mean, you look at those which really is that definition, it is those who believe that being white is a superior race, right, and that those who are white should be the dominant race. And you see that ideology adherence in the KKK and Nazis and those who follow that ideology that you and I and virtually everyone would recognize needs to be denounced and defeated. And you can defeat that ideology with a superior one. That points to the fact that we are all God's children. We are all brothers and sisters. We are all equal, no matter the color of your skin, your religion. I mean, we get back to Dr. King saying, let's judge each other on the contents of our character. So that's a very specific thing. But what's dangerous, and I've seen throughout my time in the military, you get asked questions. You have to literally fill out petitions and are you an adherent to, I forget the exact language, but basically trying to say, okay, let's find those who may be those few dangerous people who follow this ideology and may try to carry it out in a violent manner. And that's really, I think that's really where there may be an area of concern. But what's dangerous now is the term white supremacy is really being thrown out and attached to anybody who voted for Trump. Right. People who are white, apparently now all white people are racist. It's being thrown out in a way that allows and enables those in positions of power to abuse that power and target Americans, whether it's with surveillance or all the different tools at their disposal, including those that Adam Schiff is proposing in his new domestic terrorism legislation, which is incredibly dangerous and very much unconstitutional when you look at it from a civil liberties perspective.
So that brings us back to the Constitution. Let's just go through a few things. First Amendment. There are 5 freedoms guaranteed in the First Amendment. Let's just start with the freedom of press. There is talk now of silence. Congress members wrote a letter this week and sent it to Comcast, AT&T, Amazon, Facebook, Google, and said, if you're still doing business with Fox News and those like Fox News, we want to know why. I mean, this is outrageous. Can you define the First Amendment's freedom of press and freedom of speech? Because I think we have a misunderstanding in America.
I think you and I clearly understand what that means, but it is scary that members of Congress who are in charge of powerful committees that regulate these media entities seem to not have that understanding at all. Congress does not have the constitutional authority to tell any media agency what they can have on their airwaves. They don't have that power. But this letter I read as a clear signal of intimidation.
Oh, yeah.
That somehow Congress may try to levy or exercise some kind of authority to bully, whether it's AT&T or Time Warner or the people that they sent, Hulu, that they sent these letters to fall in line. And the thing that there's a few things that jumped out to me in that letter, but they're pointing to information and what these media entities were or are doing to stop that. And again, pointing to conservative news outlets as disinformation, correct. And pointing to only conservative media outlets as the propagators of this disinformation.
Let me interrupt you. Let me interrupt you here. That's exactly what I would expect a Russian operative to say.
Mm-hmm.
That's the disinformation.
Here's the funny thing.
Yeah, that's the disinformation that nobody seemed to have a problem with when they did it to you.
Exactly. They did not have a problem with former Secretary Clinton propagating that lie, baseless, evidenceless accusation.
Nej, så mycket kollar på YouTube. Vad gör du själv?
Not only did not have a problem carrying that, they continued to repeat it and reinforce that, and not just over a week's worth of news stories. This went on for virtually the entire time I was campaigning for president. Another example, they had no problem, NBC, ABC, all of these news networks, they had no problem propagating the lie that James Clapper told to the United States Senate that the government was not conducting mass surveillance on Americans by collecting our phone metadata and looking into our emails. No problem. In fact, they've given him a platform on CNN as some kind of expert. So you can lie to the US Senate, not be prosecuted for it, get your lie covered by the media, and then the media will put you up on TV and pay you a bunch of money to continue to act as though you're an expert. They had no problem and no punishment, no consequence for propagating the lies that took us into the Iraq War. The list goes on and on and on. So this is the approach they're going to take, that they are taking. We, the American people, need to expose the double standard, the hypocrisy, and the very transparent attempt to silence those who hold views that they, those in power, do not deem as acceptable. And what's so clear to me in all of this is if there was confidence in their argument, their policies, their proposals or philosophy, that their ideas are superior to those who they disagree with from a conservative spectrum, why not just present them and have confidence that your argument will defeat the other? So it exposes this insecurity and lack of confidence and fear that, oh my gosh, if they hear these other ideas or these other voices, they might believe it, they might support it, they might vote for candidates who hold those views, and we can't have that happen.
But you know that there are people on both sides of the aisles, progressives, if you will, on both sides of the aisles. And I mean progressives as the original early 20th century progressive that believes in, an authoritarian sort of dictatorship without the connotations of what we've learned dictatorships were. In 1900 dictatorship where somebody is an administrator, and those administrators are just much smarter than the American people, and they're educated, and they're surrounded by experts. So there's this feeling with, I think, a lot of people in Washington, it seems, that they really almost kind of despise the American people, or they just need to say what they have to say to the American people because we know what we have to do. And so that gives you all kinds of room to do really anything because it's just a bunch of cattle. We got to get them through the chute.
What we're seeing here is this blatant arrogance that really says we know better for the American people than they do for themselves. They're too stupid to know any better. They're too stupid to make decisions for themselves. They're incapable of gathering information, forming opinions and views that will allow them to make decisions at the ballot box. And so people in power will make that decision for us. And worse yet, their motivation is not the best interest of the American people.
Right.
Their motivation is, how do I keep power? How do I get more power? Or how do I get power back? And that's what I saw very clearly throughout my 8 years in Congress, where I was both in the minority when Republicans were in charge and then in the majority when Democrats took over the House. The decisions were driven very clearly on a daily basis on that calculus. If you're in power, how do you keep it? And if you're not, how do you get it back?
So you, I'm sure, know, are you following the Great Reset at all from the World Economic Forum and what's happening?
I haven't.
Urge you to go to worldeconomicforum.org and begin to look. We are oligarchy, and it's all out in the open, and it revolves around the idea of ESGs, or is it, yeah, environmental, social justice, and governmental standards. Well, that's great, unless you're starting to put those into companies, and those companies now say, we are only doing business with people who believe this and will do this. Coca-Cola has on their own site about 100 pages. This is their bottler in Europe that is ahead of them here, but they're quickly catching up. Several times they say, in order to justify our business license, we will do these things in the community. We will do this and that. Now, that's great if that's what you want to do as a company. But we are now seeing, for instance, with Facebook and Google, they're doing the bidding in many ways of the government, where they are going around the Constitution. Government can't violate that, but this is a private company. So they are silencing people, but it seems to be awfully convenient, the handshake between them and the government, and they're in business with each other. And you see other companies that are also coming in, and they are doing business with the governments of the world, and they're going to get payback. It's this ingenious system called stakeholder capitalism, where we're all stakeholders, not shareholders, stakeholders. And so if it's not good for all of the stakeholders, you can't do it. That's a fundamental perversion of what America and freedom really is. That's Chinese capitalism, or basically what we've been, except with guns on the other end of it. It's corrupt capitalism, crony capitalism at best. When you have all of these interests that are coming together, and the government knows it doesn't have the trust of the American people, the media knows it doesn't have the trust of the American people, the media also doesn't have the money to do it. When you have people that need each other, Facebook, Google, they need the governments of the world to not come after them like a bag of bricks. And the government needs Google and Facebook to help us out a little bit, help us corral the American people a little bit. How do we get out of this trap?
It's a big one, and this comes down to remembering and harnessing the power that we have within our hands, especially in America, through two primary means: how we vote, who we vote for, and how we choose to spend our dollar. Because both of these are a means of communication where we get to take a stand.
Yeah, but when you take a stand, hang on just a second. When you take a stand, I took a stand at Fox. I didn't like the direction that I felt that they were going. I didn't like the direction I thought CNN was going as well. And I took a huge risk in 2011 and built my own company. I was the first one to go out. It was only me and I think Major League Baseball at the time that were doing what's called Over the Top. And it was crazy. Everybody said it was crazy. Well, now it's the norm for a lot of people. I know you have your own podcast. It's the norm for people. And yet I every day walk in wondering if something I'm going to say will be the trigger to shut me down and have Amazon pull my services and Google bury me, or some ISD just saying, sorry, no business for you. How do you fight back? Because they hold all of the cards, it seems.
Yeah, this is a very real risk, and that's exactly the calculus I was thinking through as I'm getting ready to launch my podcast and YouTube show. Is what guests will I have, or what topic is one that will cause them at any time to just say, yeah, you know what, we're going to pull the plug and make it so that your voice is not being heard. I mean, this is a very real threat that we're facing. in our society and in our governance, I mean, this is where we have to do a better job. We, the American people, have to do a better job in deciding who we are sending to Washington to make these decisions. Is it going to be more of the same, where we see politicians who go and collect the checks from Facebook and Google and big tech and all of these different entities, where it's, hey, you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours. When you need me and that vote's coming before committee, don't worry, I'll be there for you. Just send a few more dollars my way. Are we going to keep sending people to Washington who are so easily cowed to toe the party line based on threats that, and I've seen this, based on threats, hey, if you don't fall in line, we're going to yank your committees. If you don't fall in line, we're not going to be there for you when you need help in your next reelection. Or are we going to send people who are firmly rooted in that desire to always put the interests of the American people first? You mentioned this stakeholder capitalism, and clearly in this stakeholder capitalism, we the people are not being considered stakeholders.
Oh, no, wait, this is the best part of it. They answer that question. Well, wait a minute, where's my voice? They answer that in your elected officials. So your government is your voice.
Yes. And the government, and this is, okay, so this gets to the heart of the problem, where, and I saw over the last several years, people coming and meeting with me in Washington, D.C., and just this constant rhetoric about the concern of the rise of populism in the United States and in the world, and what a dangerous thing that is. And I every time I kept scratching my head. Look, you see the rise of people's frustrations and anger and pain, and stepping up and saying, hey, no, we're not going to allow the very few, the wealthiest, the most powerful to control all of these decisions that impact our lives in most often a negative way. And we're going to stand up and do something about it through who we vote for, through exercising our voice and our freedom of speech, and see people within our government and within our corporate society openly and publicly talking about that as being a threat. And I think there's a silver lining to that, because it shows that even though we may feel powerless at different times, there is power in our voices. There is power in our vote. This is the institutions that our founders set up for us to be able to exercise that power of having a government of
but do we believe,
which frankly is under threat right now.
Do we believe that, especially if H.R. 1 passes? I mean, that's the federal. I mean, that's unconstitutional. H.R. 1, I'm sure you're familiar with, is the bill that is trying to be passed by the House to federalize, in many ways, the U.S. elections. That is unconstitutional. But if they get half of those things through, you're not going to be able to trust an election. And that's what you've said this a couple of times. You got to be careful on who you vote for, and you really have to yada. And for the first time in my life, I have thought to myself each time, well, but does that really, I mean, is that going to matter? I mean, does that matter anymore? Will our voice actually be heard and counted fairly? I have no problem. Everybody I ever endorse or I'm for, they always lose. So, I'm used to losing, and I'm a good loser. I understand the people's will. I got it. But I'm not sure that we're entering territories where you can trust that the people, that that's actually their will. Is that too conspiratorial? Or?
We have to. No, it's not. I understand where you're coming from, and the concern is very, very real for a variety of reasons. Election integrity is something for years, been something for years that I, as a member, not only spoke about and warned against, but actually introduced legislation to address, recognizing that if we as voters don't have faith that our votes will be counted as we cast them, then what is our democracy?
Right.
There's nothing left. And so, I introduced legislation, Securing America's Elections Act. I think you and I talked, actually, when I first introduced this bill, that very simply, it continued to support the state's authority in administering elections. and merely said, if you're using an electronic system, there needs to be a voter verified paper backup or a paper ballot record to ensure that we protect ourselves from hackers or manipulation of those votes. You have an auditable paper trail and provided resources to the states to be able to do that.
Yeah.
That legislation ultimately, and this was bipartisan, this is Democrats and Republicans, people who've talked about concerns about election integrity, they didn't do anything when they had the chance.
No, because I think everybody likes to play.
There's an issue related.
Everybody likes to play in the gray area.
Exactly.
It might benefit me one day. So
when it's advantageous.
Yeah.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
And that's the issue here. The other major issue here is with the media. The media bias. I experienced this in a very real way, especially in my presidential campaign, of how the power of the mainstream media to decide what narrative they're going to choose to tell about you. The fact that there's little to no interest in talking about real issues, substantive issues that are critical to the American people. It's entertainment, it's ratings, it's political theater, and ultimately if they decide, you know what, we don't want people to hear from you anymore, I experienced a blackout, a media blackout that made it so the only way I could communicate with voters was, hey, we're holding multiple town halls every day, we're out on social media, we're trying to reach as many people as possible, but it becomes, like I'm sitting here with a squirt gun up against a flotilla of aircraft carriers.
Right.
And it's a very helpless feeling. But so understanding these threats to our democracy is critical so that we can work to address them. We can work to address them through new media. We can work to address them through how we cast our votes, through exercising our speech, through pushing back against these threats to our Bill of Rights and our Constitution and our fundamental rights.
You have witnessed it firsthand, and it continues. Let me just stay. I don't think we're going to get past the First Amendment, but let me just stay with the First Amendment on something that I know you had blowback on. But there's news this week that a scientific-based book endorsed by doctors at the University of Boston and psychiatrists, Princeton, et cetera, some big names. The book has been banned, even though it has been out for 3 years. Amazon decided it was hate speech. And if you've read the book, I have not, but I've been told by many who have, it is compassionately based. It is really for parents to get another point of view when a doctor says, oh, give your kids transgender drugs. Go ahead, let them change it. Have them have the surgery. It's now been banned by Amazon. You can't come out and talk about the bill that you tried to pass or you sponsored, banning trans women in girls' sports. You're a heretic. You're a witch. We should burn you. How do you continue to fight when science, this is a chromosomal issue, science is being dismissed?
We have to keep fighting back, using our voices and using our dollars. I think there was another example, maybe similar to this, the book that was written by, I think Alison Schreier was her name, that went to, I think it was up at Target, and then I think they got 1 or 2 complaints, they yanked the book, and then a whole bunch of people went in and said, I want to read this book, and they ended up reinstating it and putting the book back on their shelves as a result. So our voices matter. And even though we may feel as individuals, it's tough to make an impact. Being able to stand up as people who love and appreciate free speech, whether or not we agree with what's in these books or not. I mean, there could be a book that's written that I may wholeheartedly disagree with. I will still stand up for the right for people to have access to information. And again, this is something that we started this off with the oath that I've taken as a soldier and a member of Congress. And what that oath really means, it's not just words on a page. It's not just words we recite when we raise our right hand. It means actually that I may disagree with your speech, but I'm willing to lay my life down for your right
Exactly right.
to speak.
So,
That's what it comes down to. And this is where each of us, we can't just sit back and say, you know what, it's a lost cause, because there's so much at stake, and we have to stand up. We have to stand up for each other, for our freedoms, and for our country.
so let's stay on this topic a little bit with transgenderism, but also include COVID. There is this my way or the highway, and our children are really at risk. Our schools are still closed. We know what this is. We didn't a year ago. And our schools are still closed. And our teachers are, in California having a parade to say, support us. We want to keep them closed until it's safe. Meanwhile, our girls, I think, are being disenfranchised by a boy who says, I'm in the middle of changing to a girl. You're built differently. How do we break this for our kids? Because it seems, let me add critical race theory into it. It seems our kids are being torn apart and used by a system that doesn't really seem to care. Look at the statistics on suicide and loneliness. What should be done there?
Well, I'll start with the legislation that I introduced before I left Congress with a colleague and friend of mine, a Republican from Oklahoma named Congressman Mark Wayne Mullen. Our legislation, which was called the Protect Women's Sports Act, did just that. It looked at Title IX and recognized the need to strengthen, clarify, and uphold the intent of Title IX, which I think was enacted in 1972 in order to provide a level playing field for girls and women in sports.
Mm-hmm.
I'll use my mom as an example. She grew up in East Grand Rapids in Michigan. She was the second of three girls and very athletic, very active, but the most opportunity that she had was water ballet and cheerleading. And she did not have the opportunity to go and compete in the kinds of sports that she wished she could. So Title IX was a game changer for the generation that came next. We see these incredible female athletes who've gone on to the highest levels because of those opportunities provided by Title IX. Now, Mark Wayne and I, he's got three little girls himself. They all love to wrestle. And I think they're 10, twins are 10, and then he's got a 12-year-old, and they're really good. They're extremely competitive. But for him and his wife, their concern is not only the unfairness of now saying, well, hey, you might have to go and compete against a biological male, but the safety risk that is inherent with that. So it is a very practical, science-based, common sense that and girls in sports, period. That's it. It's very simple. And we see now with girls who are competing in track and field in high school, there are a number of different examples in the country where the physiological differences between a biological male and a biological female competing against each other take away that level playing field, take away scholarships that they were hoping to get to go to college, take away that opportunity that they were seeking to have as female athletes in sports.
Let's go to COVID. And
common sense. It come out to common sense.
Let's go to COVID and the lockdowns and now we have to wear double masks and we may not be able to come out of lockdown until 2022. What is going on and what should be done?
Common sense and science. In the midst of a pandemic, these should be the driving factors of the decisions that are being made. And you look at how we could have alleviated so much of the negative impact that we've seen going back to the very beginning in the hypocrisy and incompetence of our leaders. And you mentioned the double mask, or saying triple mask. It's a ridiculous and not non-practical approach to people who want to protect themselves. This could have been addressed in the very beginning by Dr. Fauci and the CDC. Instead of lying to the American people saying, don't wear a mask, it's not going to do anything for you. Specifically because they were trying to protect the N95 medical grade masks for healthcare workers, which is important. They have the highest exposure. Why not just tell the American people the truth and say, hey, look, we have a limited amount of these masks. We want to save them for those who are treating COVID patients every day. But we're going to do everything we possibly can to make it so that these masks will be available to everyone so that you too can have this same protection.
Tulsi, I had some of the N95. I had some of the N95 masks. Friends of mine had some of the N95 masks because we're preppers. And we turned them into the local hospital. The reason why they lied is because they don't believe in the inherent goodness of the American people, and they lack the belief that Americans will do the right thing when you inform them and ask them.
I think that's what it comes down to. And unfortunately, here we are a year later, and it's continuing. I was early on in the pandemic, calling everyone I possibly could, talking to small businesses, importers, people. How do we get more masks? How do we get more masks, these N95 masks for our healthcare? How do we deal with this massive shortage in supply? And still today, it is virtually impossible for any individual who's not working in the medical field to get access to these masks that could have saved thousands of people's lives because they actually work. And then we wouldn't be having this conversation about people wearing triple masks, which really make it almost impossible for people to breathe. If we had instituted this and leaders at that time recognized the importance of it, again, science and common sense, mass production of these masks, stop exporting them to other countries, then we could have, you don't have the kinds of shutdowns of our economy. You don't have the kinds of mass lockdowns that we've seen. And at its core, from the get-go, having those who are public health experts lying to the American people has created this suspicion and lack of trust in those who are supposed to be looking out for us.
Yes.
Our best interest. And I also don't believe that what you're saying is true.
Okay, we are so sadly out of time. I hope that you would come back on this because we only got to the first one.
I would love to.
Well, I do want to ask you this question before we leave, and that is, the Tea Party was not anti-American. It wasn't anti-government. It wasn't anti-Obama as much as it was, where is my party? Where are the people who are standing up for the Constitution? Where are the people that say, no, wait, you can't do that because this is the system we have? And it was turned into all kinds of things, and then eventually discouraged and scattered. The idea of it, though, was our party has gone over the edge. You are one of the more important voices in America because you are saying your party has gone over the edge. And I keep saying to my audience, look, the Democrats in Washington and the people like Antifa and the leadership that know the goals of Black Lives Matter are not the people who are in your community that are not paying attention that says, yeah, Black Lives Matter. It means two different things. And your average Democrat who's not paying attention is not your enemy. The enemy is on any side where they're trying to stop freedom and shut people off and become authoritarian. But I'm losing hope that there are Democrats that there are out there to wake up and to rally. When do the Democrats do to their party what the Tea Party was trying to do to theirs.
I think there are a lot of people who are afraid in the midst of this cancel culture, conflict culture society that we are living in, which is why I think it's so important to continue to encourage and promote people who are standing up and speaking the truth and being able to call out wrong when you see it, whether it happens to be people who may be in your political party or not, and to call out what's right, whether they are in your political party or not. And I think that by doing so, we can begin this kind of deeper spiritual revival in our country that speaks to, I'll circle back, I mean, this is what we call aloha here in Hawaii. It speaks to this recognition that you and I, that every single one of us are God's children. And when we recognize that inspires the respect and the care and compassion and love that we have for one another in understanding that. And this is what allows us to heal these wounds. This allows us to find that strength to speak the truth, to stand up, to protect our freedoms, to protect our rights. This is not about everybody falling in lockstep. We all have to be the same party. I don't believe that at all. This is about us building our future on this foundation, on this spiritual foundation, where real change is possible. And for us, in who we are selecting as leaders in our country, these are the qualities that I hope we collectively look for those who are inspired by this recognition of who we all are, and therefore inspired to take action towards service.
Tulsi, I mean this sincerely. My home, my facilities are your facilities and your home. If you need anything ever, I will fight and watch your back in the trenches. We may disagree on a lot of policies, but it is a real privilege to see somebody of principle stand up. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Glenn. It's great to talk to you, and I look forward to our next conversation.
Great.
What if this happens? What if that happens? Yes, all those things can happen. But you came here to experience life, not to avoid life. So it's not about being positive, negative. The important thing is, at this stage in your life, you just focus on enhancing this life. Don't worry about what it will yield. You should not worry about what this life is going to yield. What it yields depends on time in which we are, many other aspects of life. But if this is an enhanced life, it will not continuous life. Doesn't matter what it yields.
Hallå?
Maybe you won't become an artist, maybe you...
Jag har gjort det. Jo. Ja. Ska det bli kräftost på mackan med man? Ja. Ja. Ja, puss. Natti. Puss. Hej då. Ja. Hej.
You will become an engineer, maybe you will become a doctor, maybe you will become something else through the healthcare. As long as you enhance this life, something worthwhile will come out of it. What will happen in the end? The same thing. So, you don't know future. Isn't that a great thing? Fortunately. Suppose you know your entire future. Would you not want to commit suicide right now? Huh? Isn't it wonderful that in spite of all your brains, you can't figure what is next moment? Hello? Isn't it wonderful? Have you ever seen a suspense thriller movie? Have you? See, right now, there's a very wonderful suspense thriller in the local theater. None of you have seen it. I've seen it. Shall I tell you the story? Okay, the whole story is going to take too much time, so I'll just tell you the last suspense part. Okay? Shall I? No. Why? Because suspense means like this. You go and see the poster. Oh, this guy, I think he's going to do this. That guy is going to do that. Oh, this director, most probably this how it's going to go. Then you go inside, see all those still images. Then you say, definitely this guy is going to do this, that guy is going to do this, all kinds of projections. You go and sit in the auditorium, the first few scenes and said, this is it, he's going to do this, but he did something different. Then you said, he's going to do that, and he did something different. You said, this is going to happen, and something else happened. Halfway down the movie, you discussed with your friend, last scene is definitely like this. When the last scene came, something totally different happened. Then you come out and say, wow, what a wonderful movie. Yes? You went there, sat, you saw the first scene, and you said, this is what is going to happen. And that's what happened in the last scene, as it happens in most movies. Then you come out and say, this is not good, isn't it? So essentially what you're saying is, if all your predictions go wrong, it's wonderful. If all your predictions come true, it's no good. Then I'm asking, what's wrong with your life? Your life is fantastic. You can predict whatever, it all goes wrong. Wonderful. Only problem is, you lost your ability to enjoy the suspense. That's your only problem. Yes? You want to know the end. You're a match fixer. Yes?
Hela och välkomna tillbaka till tankekvarten och inte igår, men ja, det var ju fett när jag råkade in direkt här. Jag är på förbannad men också väldigt imponerad. Biden och bombat Syrien. Jag tog det med Håkan Bergmark igår. Bombama och Biden. Det var ju väntat. Det är tråkigt, men vill man ha krig, då röstar man på de här gångerna. Det är så det är. Det där var en konspirationsteori i valet. Det var något som sa det. Nu förväntar man att det kommer bli bombningar igen. Det är lite löst att säga så. Men samtidigt nu är det bevis att det skedde och att man är egentligen förvånad. Och om man pratar om Obama och Biden så det är de här människorna som står för jävla fina och tycker att nej men Trump det är det värsta man kan utsätta mänskligheten för. Att man sluter fred och tid som Nordkorea. De kan åtminstone skaka hand. Jag vet inte hur långt det har gått till det. Men, och man hjälper fattar på arbete. det är bara, om man tar tillbaka sina trupper och Obama körde krig, hur kan Trumps handlingar vara värre än Obama och Biden?
Ja, det är ju på grund av hans Twitter. Eller hur? Jag menar, och twittra någonting tråkigt, vad är det mot att bomba sönder 2030 Syrien enligt vänstermedia?
Och enligt vänsterfolket så tror jag att de gör en kostnadsarbetare och gör själva tiden och man ska få upp för någonting som man har inte en jävla aning om. Och jag vet att jag gjorde en video på Facebook, men jag vet att den länsmastikerna som betonade först att det var vänstern går ju globalister och de vet inte om det själva. Det är så tragiskt att se hur man kan gå runt och med plakat eller bara tycka någonting överhuvudtaget och gnälla på Sverigedemokraterna eller Trump eller någonting som de själva har blivit utslutade. Att inte få tänka själva och allt är baserat på känslor. Men jag kände det när mina berättade om Biden och det var fylligt av de här känslorna. Men samtidigt så är det ju en stor underbar fakta att Biden eller globalisterna, Obama och de här. Det spelar ingen roll vem som sitter på tronen i Vita huset om man är globalist. De är galjonsfigurer i stunden som representerar i det här fallet USA och så blir det. Nej, jag tycker det är så jävla sjukt hur vänstern gång på gång baserar sin fakta på via känslor. Och jag tycker fascinerande att vänstern inte har en YouTube-kanal som man betonar det. Och när han sa det så det finns inga vänster. Men vad ska de prata om? De baserar allt på sina känslor. Hur kan de gå ut med fakta när de inte har sån fakta?
Jag var ju trött i morse. Min dotter väckte mig med att jag körde live i natt någon tid. Jag låg i sängen med henne och läste en bok. Och då tänkte jag det. Tänk om du, jag eller Håkan eller Lennart eller vem som helst skulle köra igång en live. En vänsterkanal. Spela deras spel. Hur skulle den komma ut i allting? Tänk att sitta och köra en vänsterstudie. Givetvis, man måste vara skådespelare. Men att säga det, att det är jättebra med kommunism. Lenin var fantastisk och Pol Pot mördade 4 miljoner människor. Det gör ingenting. Socialdemokraterna har invaderat Sverige och förstört välfärden. Men Donald Trumps Twitter, det är det värsta som finns.
Ja.
Jag förstår vad jag menar.
Ja, absolut. Ja, jag har ju pluggat teater, så jag kan ju agera lite så. Nej, men ja, det är sant, men nej, jag tror jag. Jo, det här med Twitter, det är fantastiskt. Det är skillnad på Twitter och Twitter. Det vågar ju vara som går ut med saker Twitter när han skriver. Det är ju illavarslande. Bara när han ljuger hela tiden. Det var du som tar in någon video här att han får 140 000 i månaden för att ljuga om Twitter. Alltså bara där, alltså när du sa det, jag var som fan, det var som du som stigen här. Han skiter fullständigt i, alltså får så mycket pengar i månaden. Och jag undrar hur många räkningar han har, eller Stefan vet, hur många räkningar de har, hur mycket de gör avlöningar för de har 80 spel, de får inte lika mycket. Och jag menar, deras material, det får ju de i rinken. Hur många räkningar har jag? Telefonen, hyran, elen. Vad mer betalar de? Alltså, de har ju, jag har ibland här, inte 0 kronor, men jag har någon tusen kvar nästa dag kommer. Men jag går ändå på det och avvaktar och håller koll på lite pengarna vad drar iväg när jag behöver köpa någonting. Jag har till och med avbokat min tandläkare för att han får stoppa till där. Man fick ju bli legal i måndag som man kommer på 50%.
Jag kan skicka fast det. Vilket land vill du ha?
Jag tar 10.
Jag får allting gratis.
Men då undrar jag, för de har säkert lätt att 100 000 kronor kvar på kontot när nästa lön kommer. Det är inte bara att de får 140 000, utan de bara matar på. De får kontot och hänger på kontot hela tiden. Vi kommer ihåg också att de har sina stora löner. Sen har de ju traktamenten på allting de gör. Mat betalt och resor betalt och allting. Så precis som du säger, de har ju mycket som helst kvar efter lönen utbetalt. Men vad jag blir förbannad på till exempel en kille som Morgan Johansson. Dels är han ju oduglig det han gör. Men han skulle inte vara där han är. Han skulle inte ens få ställa en toalett åt en uteliggare. Men det första gången jag kritiserade honom, och då har han twittrat på arbetstid. Arbetstiden, du jobbar åt oss. Jag blir avstängd. Han klipper mig direkt. Första kritiken jag skrev till honom, då blir jag avstängd. Och om han sitter på arbetstid när han jobbar åt mig, hur kan han få ha rätt och klippa av mig? I så fall borde han klippa av sin lön först och göra kontot privat. Då får han göra vad han vill. För han har ju på kontot att han är en stor minister. Det är det som gör mig ilsken. För att var och en får göra vad de vill på privattid. Men han gör det ju på arbetstid. Och sen stänger han ner med mig. Jag kommer inte ihåg vad det var jag kritiserade honom för. Men det var någonting. Kan man inte ta kritik, då ska man ju först och främst inte vara minister.
Nej, precis. Och vi är fullständigt i folk går direkt att kritik för det och skriver som bäst fan han vill och skita. Jag vet att de är uppbackade av Peggy Wallenberg och allihopa. Men det, oavsett, jag ser politiker, även som har 74 tid säkert på fondens så ser jag dem som att de har jour. Alltså ska jag inte inte på natten, ja, då är de på det i tjänst. Om man skriver någonting politiskt.
Det är det de har betalt för. Och det är lite som att vara en företagsledare. Och om någon ringer mig 2 på natten, då kan inte jag säga det att jag är ledsen, det är 2 på natten. Min lön gäller inte just nu. Utan i så fall så ska jag inte vara företagsledare, utan då ska jag vara en anställd. Som du har ett schema. Jag börjar av klockan 5, så börjar jag av klockan 5. Sen kan ju du hjälpa till klockan 7 ändå om du vill. Men du har inget ansvar efter klockan 5. För det är det schema som är upplagt för det.
Ja.
Men de här har ju dels precis som vi sa, lönen är så pass stor. Och de har frivilligt tagit det här ansvaret. Det är ingen som har tvingat till dem att bli minister.
Nej, precis. Och när du sa att han är oduglig och det var på den positionen var det. Jag kan inte ens räkna på mina fingrar hur många av dem inte ska vara på din position. Hallengren,
Jag kan byta upp.
alltså.
Hallengren kan inte. Ja, nej. De som sitter i regeringen, det är det mest, i mina ögon, det står för mig. Jag skulle kunna säga i ögonen till allihopa, det är den mest inkompetenta regering jag någonsin har sett. Det finns ju ingen som har någon som helst egentligen, det finns några, utbildning eller kvalifikation. Och kolla, vi var in på Morgan Johansson. Han har varit hälsominister, han har varit justitieminister, han har varit migrationsminister. Han har flyttat runt på så många ministerposter som finns. Ja. Hallå, om jag går in på ett företag, då jobbar jag på ekonomiavdelningen. Jag kan inte jobba på försäljningsavdelningen, det är inte min grej.
Men det do something when no man can stop because our nation, Uncle Gada, and our nation was yes, right, and some plenty will die, but there's people who tell you who want it and who says for them one, which is a true, the right to live. You know, which way you take the right to live, the right to live is from the right vibe, the right vibe come from Rasta. There's something higher than the man. Och han fick komma tillbaka, vilket var för jävla uppenbart. Där var det verkligen för mig i alla fall uppenbart. De tar hand om varandra. Hur fel det har varit. Men Sverigedemokraterna som är rasister, förmodligen.
Eller hur? Snacka om nepotism. Men
men allting i Sverigedemokraternas fel. Det är konstigt att Sverigedemokraterna har allting i Sverigedemokraternas fel. De kan inte ha ett ord i vädret. De är utsläppta från allting. Det är ändå deras fel.
Ja, det är fantastiskt.
Det är kanske deras fel att Danne Eliasson har förstört 4 stycken myndigheter.
Ja, det är klart det. Att få sparka med som ligger. Ja, nej, jag är så förvånad att människor inte förstår storheten. Och sen det här att alltså, man lyssnar ju på deras vardag genom att man i det långa loppet. Och just det här när du sa den svenska regeringen. Jag tror att det är så att regeringen är en centra för att utvecklingen och allt det här med globalismen, allt det har blivit så stort problem. Och då måste de ha marionetter och styra. De är lätt manipulerade. Därför är det lättare för oligarkerna att styra de människorna som blir i den riktningen. Därför som ser ut så här. Och att det är generellt att bara det är något andra.
Sverige var ju, vad ska vi säga, det var en enkel testbana i och med att Sverige inte var korrupt tidigare på det sättet.
Nej.
Ursäkta, ni har inte mask? Det har jag. Jaha, vadå?
Jaha.
Jaha.
Welcome back. The fight for American Indian rights has taken many turns over the centuries, but one modern-day maverick has always used a very direct approach, even if it means confronting the military. Now he's insisting on building a free and independent republic for his people, the Lakota. Russell Means has made a name for himself in some unusual ways. He starred next to Daniel Day-Lewis in the Hollywood blockbuster movie The Last of the Mohicans, which he describes as one of the most accurate portrayals of American Indians. Means was even painted by the legendary artist Andy Warhol, and took on the U.S. National Guard in a revival of the Battle of the Wounded Knee. Russell Means now wants to build the Republic of Lakota on 240,000 square kilometers of land, cutting into the states of Nebraska, South Dakota, North Dakota, Montana, and Wyoming. Russell Means is seeking investment and international recognition for his republic, and says it will be tax-free and based on a matriarchal political system. But we ask, how does Russell Means propose to separate these lands from U.S. rules, and what happens to those who already live there? Join us with your questions on the golden screen. Russell Means, great to have you with us.
Thank you for having me.
So you claim this large, 240,000 kilometers, square kilometers, roughly 93,000 square miles, currently roughly in the heart of the United States, declared the Republic of Dakota. How has the U.S. government responded?
Well, as Gandhi has said, first they ignore you, then they laugh at you, then they fight you, and then you win. But right now they're ignoring us, which is what we wish and are thankful for, because it allows us to continue the rebuilding of the foundation of our freedom as lawful and legal independent country. Understand that the United States of America claims to be a nation of laws. Consequently, we are using those very same laws of theirs to hog tie them, to tie them up so that they cannot, and this is totally non-violent. They cannot attack us. The American people wouldn't let them. Besides, we're only 10 in our existing country, in those 5-state areas, we're only 10% of the population. The rest are 99% white. And we are welcoming all peoples of all the sacred colors to become citizens of La Corte because we understand the sacredness of human beings.
Now, presumably those who are living on those lands now, if you do become the Republic of Dakota, they presumably will have to change their citizenship.
Yes, and there's two main reasons why. And I've never understood the patriarchal systems that somehow convinces its own population that income tax and property tax are a necessary evil for civilization. It's absurd, absolutely absurd. There's two taxes. And people have asked me, well, how can you run a government without income tax? And I said, wait, the United States of America, for longer than 50% of its existence, went without an income tax. They didn't have one until 1930, less than 100 years ago, 95 to be exact. So it has been done, and property tax, the most onerous and stupid tax in all of human existence, where you never own your property and you can't even be sure of passing it down to your next generation because of taxes. We're going to eliminate those taxes. And consequently, have a political system that is run by consensus. Because having two major political parties in an alleged republic that guarantees you individual rights, it's impossible. It's impossible to guarantee individual rights with just two political parties. You're asking for exactly this is what's happening. You're asking for another Bush and a Bush and Bush and Bush and Bush.
Well, let's get an email that came from Norwich in England for you, Russell. And this from Paula Varley says, establishing a matriarchal republic is an amazing idea, but I'm skeptical that any part of the US could withdraw from the whole. So, I mean, if you're really honest about the logistics of this, is it feasible to be able to be so independent in the middle of what is obviously a very, dynamic international country?
As I stated, it's very feasible because it's lawful. And not only nationally, according to the Constitution of the United States, but to the law of treaties, which every country is a signatory to. And we withdrew from our treaties unilaterally, which puts us into the legal and lawful framework of free and independence. Now, we understand the processes of becoming recognized, and we're working on that. We have 4 strategies: economic, political, health, and education. Those are our 4 main strategies towards the rebuilding of our nationhood.
Let me ask you about this kind of support you have from other American Indians. I gather that the Lakota tribe itself, your tribe, hasn't fully sanctioned this.
That's the colonial apparatus. Listen, there are 2 regimes that follow the example of Indian policies of the United States of America. That's Nazism. Back in the 1920s, Adolf Hitler wrote that the United States of America has the perfect solution on how to deal with the unwanted races, and that's to create the concentration camp. He called them labor camps, like the reservation system of America. Consequently, the genocide against gypsies, the Jewish people, and homosexuals at all happened during World War II. That country is no longer in existence because of that policy. And then there was apartheid in South Africa. There's the West Bank in Israel. Carbon copies of the reservation system. Now, the apartheid system is gone, but you still have apartheid in America. And yet no one focuses on that. And because America backs the apartheid system in the West Bank, that place is tied up. So consequently, what we are saying, and what the American people are sympathetic to as well as Millennium, is the fact that legally and lawfully, I keep hammering that on, is that we are free and independent. And we have the general support not only of the American people and my own people, but also worldwide. And I want to say this, in the history of patriarchy, never has an empire been defeated from without. It's always fomented its own destruction from within.
Russell, we had an email.
Republic of Lahore.
So, we had an email that came in from New Zealand. Zelina from New Zealand, who also goes by the name Magpie, wrote in saying, I doubt that the US will ever let the Lakota withdraw. If they cannot return their native lands, then appropriate compensation should be paid out to the generations. They should come to talk to New Zealand's Maoris. Now, do you see some sort of solution of financial compensation if you can't reach agreement on actually taking the land?
Of course. That is not our concern. The reason we have become free and independent again is because of the genocidal practices of the United States government, which are ongoing. The average Lakota speaker's age, of a fluent Lakota speaker, is 65 years of age. We're on the cusp of becoming extinct. Because once we lose our language, we lose our worldview. We lose the taste out of our mouths. As an African woman in the East Coast of the United States stated about what slavery did to them. And we lose the essence, our worldview. So we cannot lose our language. The life expectancy of our men is the lowest in the world, 43.9 years. The women life expectancy is 52 years. So that's of the Lakota, my people. We cannot continue. We have no place to live. Money, you can burn with the nod of a buffalo's head. The land is forever.
We had Zelina, who goes by Magpie Woman, also said a very cryptic thing in her email that said, that the minute you become independent, you should extradite Leonard. And I was intrigued. She said, you know who Leonard was? Does that ring a bell?
Leonard Peltier was a political prisoner of the American government. And yes, his situation is very unlawful and illegal. Nevertheless, in our struggle, it is not unlike the ANC and the Palestinian struggle and all freedom struggles, in which when we, as revolutionaries, when we go into a struggle, we understand the risks, imprisonment and or death. So we don't want anyone focusing on someone in prison, and that takes away from their energies towards freedom of the people. And that's what this revolution is all about. One revolution, we return to what we were, free and independent, with our languages and with our health intact.
That's what
With our language.
Patrick's on the line from the UK. Let's squeeze him into the question here. Patrick, your question for us on these.
Thank you, Richard, for this. Thank you very much for this opportunity given to me to express myself. I'm coming from England, but I'm an African. I would like to share these views of the speakers in that he did mention about apartheid in South Africa. I was in South Africa, I work in South Africa, and the whole African continent is sharing the same pain they are going through. But what he speaks, what he's saying actually right now on air, is the reality of what we are living in Africa. What can really be done to salvaguard the total integrity of African people, the total sovereignty of African people? Because apparently we look free, but in reality we are still colonies. What can you add?
Okay. Do you see Russell, do you see a parallel that might be applied once you here that might actually help Africans, because Patrick sees a parallel with the African people and the African people.
As well, all indigenous people, I believe the entire world should return to a matriarchal system, which is a balanced system. But more importantly, you should, when you decolonize oneself, you have to get rid of those imaginary lines that the colonists left, because that's what divides you. You know, you don't have respect for your relatives' visions in your own country. Witness Rwanda and all the more recent genocidal patterns of what those imaginary lines the colonials left have dealt you, that kind of a genocidal hand, like in a game of cards. So that self-destruction from colonization. So we need to get rid of those imaginary lines and reassert true sovereignty, which is respect for your relatives' visions, which goes back to pre-colonial discovery.
Well, Russell, you know, we barely had a chance to touch on your very colourful life. I hope we get a chance to chat with you again. Thank you so much for being with us.
I hope so also. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for being with us. Join us on
Hey, have you ever heard of AIM? AIM? You mean? If I were to tell you what I know about this YouTube channel, what do you think? Is like a super boost to your immune system. The key thing is understanding what are you doing. The technique is not what you're doing. What you're doing is using that tool. It has this beautiful transformative effect. That's something everyone can do, even when you're in lockdown. Mark Twain said, there are liars, damn liars, and statistics. Well, what does that mean? It means that you can do anything with statistics and manipulate them if you're clever. And I'm not trying to say there's any nefarious purpose here. I'm just saying that people who try to speak with more certainty than they should about something that we have a fraction of 1% of the public that's been tested on something that's this contagious is sort of, you just got to take it with a grain of salt, honestly. Which is why they're assuming that the reason we're all on lockdown